AIOps Evolution Weekly.
Welcome, everybody, to the AIOps Evolution Podcast. My name is Sean McDermott. I'm your host. This week, we have ScienceLogic on. So as we've seen in other episodes this season, we're spending a lot of time talking to vendors about their technologies and their key differentiators and what they're doing in the market and innovation, things like that. So this week, we have ScienceLogic, and with me is Leslie Minnix-Wolfe, who is the Vice President of Product Marketing at ScienceLogic. So welcome, Leslie. I know you and I have, we haven't actually met before, but we have been running parallel lives for a lot of our career, both being in the Reston, Virginia area, Northern Virginia, and also being involved in enterprise management. There aren't a lot of us in that space. So I'm surprised we haven't met before because we actually worked at companies together on different times. But welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Sean. It's a pleasure to be here. And as you said, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. I didn't realize that we had that much overlap in our career, but apparently we have.
Yeah. So it's a small world out there, that's for sure. So Leslie, tell me a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into the real meat of this.
Okay. Well, as you said, I am based in the Northern Virginia area. I've been here for many years. Been working pretty much for the last 30 years in the enterprise management space. Worked at a number of local startups, Managed Objects, NetTuitive, our companies that have been based in this area. Also worked at BMC Software and have ultimately landed at ScienceLogic, where I'm running the product marketing organization there. So moved around, but mostly in the enterprise space on the performance monitoring side.
Yeah, excellent. So we could probably spend a whole podcast just talking about all the stories from the late 90s and 2000s of enterprise management in the Washington, D.C. area, but we'll save that for another episode. Let's kind of start with really the state of AIOps, right? And how we got here from your perspective, where we're at today. So give me a little bit of your thoughts on that.
Okay. Well, sure. So, as you mentioned today, and I'm sure in earlier podcasts, that, this market has been around for a long time. And, there are lots of vendors out there that have been providing monitoring solutions in the enterprise space for years and years. And, AIOps is a relatively new market. It's emerging. There's no magic quadrant. Only in the last few years has Forrester published a wave around the AIOps space. And it really has formed out of the enterprise monitoring solutions, whether you're an APM vendor, a network performance management vendor, or an infrastructure monitoring vendor. All of these, different vendors have been looking towards how do we handle the volume of data, the volume of information about the infrastructure that is under management. As companies have grown, as companies have invested in more technology to run their businesses, there's more infrastructure to manage. They generate more alerts or events, and the noise volume has increased dramatically. And add to that the move to cloud. As we've started to monitor, technology that is very short-lived, it comes and grows, it bursts, and you have more information, more technology to monitor, more opportunities for things to go wrong. People are looking for ways to reduce the workload, to be able to understand what's happening in this very complex IT environment that is spanning the data center, cloud, SaaS, applications and services. And in order to do that, they're looking for a new approach. And that's really where AIOps has come in. It's a new way of really shifting the workload from people to more machine-driven automation, where we're able to process large volumes of data coming from a variety of sources and be able to use that to identify problems faster, hopefully in a proactive or predictive manner, and then not only identify them, but be able to diagnose and resolve them as quickly as possible. So There's many aspects of AIOps, so we could spend hours. I know we only have about 40 minutes, but in a nutshell, I think that's what's driving this is people are looking for ways to address performance problems with their infrastructure and services and applications, and do it in a much more efficient and effective manner.
So if somebody's listening to this podcast, going, okay, I hear that, I hear the value proposition, the amount of data processing, and they're like, okay, I'm ready to start dipping my toe into the AIOps world. Irrespective of this ScienceLogic platform and the products you offer, what would you recommend to somebody that they start thinking about in preparation of getting onto that? As you and I spoke, this AIOps journey, like where do you think people should start?
Well, I think foundationally, it's about the data, right? Gartner has shared a metric, 79% of time spent by data scientists is on collecting, cleaning up, and preparing data. So the fundamental, and probably the starting point, that we recommend to our customers and prospects is that you start with data, and you need to consider what are the tools that you have in place, what are the mechanisms that you have in place, what kind of data are you trying to bring together in order to drive automation. And I think that's really the core to AIOps is having an intelligent data source, a data lake that has all the information in it, and that information is clean, it's prepared so that you can start to apply machine learning or analytics on top of that data in order to drive automation.
Gotcha. So when we're talking to customers and they're trying to figure out, what to do with AIOps, this whole concept, we get a lot of questions about use cases, right? So where do you think where customers should start thinking about some of the prime use cases for AIOps?
Sure. So there are many that you could consider here, but I think again it's once you've got your data together, I think one of the first things is understanding what problems are existing in the environment and what problems are worth investigating. So when we think of that, we think about it first and foremost is understanding the impact, understanding business impact, or service impact. That allows you to start to prioritize the work that needs to be done. Because again, if you go back to the idea, you've got tons of data, it's, lots of changes happening, how do I know what to work on? What's important to focus my energy on or focus the team's energy on? The second piece of it is once I understand what's important, how do I diagnose that problem? How do I speed up the time it takes? Many people talk about AIOps is all about mean time to repair. How do I accelerate or lower the time it takes to fix problems? So, I would say that second use case is how do I do root cause analysis? How do I diagnose, troubleshoot problems? And then a third use case would be more about automation. How do I automate the repair? So, we also often take it further than that and say, it's not just about fixing problems. It's about being able to leverage the data that you've collected and be able to automate and do other things with that, whether that be, feeding that data into a configuration management database, whether that's automating the ticketing process, whether that's integrating with your change management processes. And as people are moving towards more of a DevOps approach, which we're seeing lots of customers doing today, is about being able to feed the data that you're monitoring into the DevOps processes and the DevOps data into the monitoring processes from an operational perspective so that you can better understand when changes are being deployed. You roll out a new release, a new application, or a new service. changes are the most common cause of a problem. So being able to feed that data into your monitoring of the operational day-to-day performance of those services is crucial. So once you've got your data and you've got that data set, being able to automate those workflows around DevOps, around SecOps, around your IT service management processes, whether it's change or problem management and things like that, that really constitutes a lot of what we view as core use cases around AIOps.
So when you're talking to your customers now or your prospects, and they're thinking about investment strategy, where do you point them for ROI and driving value? Because at some point they're going to have to articulate it to somebody, right? And say, hey, if we spend X amount of money on this, we expect to see Y. What are some things that people should be thinking about as far as ROI and investment value?
Oh, there are many. Again, you could spend hours talking about the value in here, and it grows. As you mentioned, it is a journey, and the value increases the more, of the use cases that you implement. But some of the first key value metrics can be around simply bringing all the data together. There is a tremendous amount of time, as I mentioned, the 79% of the time spent just gathering data, being able to automate that through discovery, through leveraging the existing tools that you have, having a single platform that brings data together and does the standardization of it can be a huge value and ROI, eliminating tools, the infrastructure that they run on, the administration staff, the training required, the integrations that you have to build. So there's lots of ROI around that, and that's just the core data. Where we then start to see significant ROI is around the automation. I've got lots of metrics that we've gathered from customers over the years, and some of them, very tangible. For example, on average, it takes customers 30 minutes to key in information into a service desk ticket. If you're thinking about creating a ticket and you have to manually populate it with all the information about a particular problem, being able to automate 30 minutes of time and take that out of someone's day, you could start to generate more tickets faster and have those people work on fixing problems instead of actually opening the tickets. One of the other key metrics that we've gotten on average from our customers is it takes roughly 90 minutes to actually route that ticket to the right person. So if it takes you 90 minutes to figure out who to send the ticket to, which team is it a network issue, is it an application issue, is it a storage issue, we also have seen that most organizations struggle to route tickets right the first time because they don't have good data in their service desk and their, the definitions of their assets, who owns the asset, who's responsible for it. So one of the things that we do is we automate the data that is being shared or used to populate and update and maintain your configuration management database, which is part of your service desk, which has all the asset information. If we can automate that data, we can reduce the time it takes to create the tickets. We can reduce the time that it takes to reroute and not have to reroute. We have one customer who I recently spoke with, and I won't share their name because they would probably be very embarrassed. They had 200,000 tickets last year. Of those 200,000, only 2,000 of them were routed correctly the first time because they didn't have our solution. They didn't have ScienceLogic. They weren't automatically populating their CMDB with the information in their real-time operational environment because the data was not up to date. So if you imagine 198,000 tickets times 90 minutes, that's a lot of time that was wasted and that we saved. Right?
Yeah.
Now, they also shared with us there were over 10,000 tickets that were rerouted not once, not twice, but 10 times. 10 times 90 minutes times 10,000 tickets, a lot more time. So we're able to start to quantify through automation the time savings just on ticketing and routing the tickets. Now, where it starts to really pan out, I mean, those numbers are powerful, but where we're starting to see more of our mature customers is to start automating collection of the diagnostics or triage or troubleshooting information. When a problem occurs, when an event happens, you want to be able to collect information at that very point in time about what's going on in the system to figure out what happened. I mean, imagine, if I had a ticket, it took 30 minutes to create the ticket, it took 90 minutes to route it, it's 2 hours later, and I'm trying to figure out what happened 2 hours ago. I'm trying to log into 3 different boxes and run certain diagnostic commands, which I don't remember. I had to look up in my, my run book, directions and figure out what commands to run, what things I need to look at, bring all that data together. We are able to automate a lot of those steps. We can remotely dial in or log in to different boxes. We can collect information about what processes were running, what commands were running, what log files existed, and we can bring all that data together and update the event. We enrich it with all that diagnostic information. So when that event is forwarded to the operations team and it becomes part of a ticket, we've determined, hey, this is something important, it's causing this service to degrade. We then can have all that information put right into the ticket automatically, so I don't have to go out and spend time trying to figure out what happened 2 hours ago because it's already there in the ticket for me to look at, and all I'm spending my time doing is analyzing it. Another, example of that for a customer. So one of our largest customers, Cisco, has shared metrics of $14 million in savings from automatically enriching the events with diagnostic information when there's a problem with Cisco gear. So, they sell a lot of hardware. They're using our tool to automate troubleshooting. They're using that to enrich tickets. So when they're providing service to their clients, their end customers as a managed service provider, they've been able to save tremendous amounts of time, staff productivity, and that equates to cost savings by automating a lot of the routine steps that a administrator or operator would have to perform, or an engineer, when they're trying to diagnose and resolve issues. And of course, the last piece of it is now I can start to automate. Now that I have all the diagnostics, if we know what is happening on a recurring basis, and here's an application of machine learning as well. Let's say, I have a particular problem that has occurred, 5,000 times in the last, 6 months or 9 months. We know that this particular event has occurred that many times. We have the diagnostic data to show these were the steps that were performed automatically to diagnose the problem. Well, if all of them had the same basic kind of results in them, now we can start to auto-remediate or self-heal because we know how to solve that problem, because we've seen it happen over and over and over again. We've analyzed the data to figure out that we solved it the same way over and over and over again. Now we can remediate, and people trust that the machine is actually doing an automation that is accurate because people have been doing it in the past, and they have more confidence that the AIOps solution is able to automate those remediations.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. So let's shift over a little bit. And so I'll give you some time to kind of talk about ScienceLogic and your SL1 platform and some of the things that you're doing there and the innovation. One of the things that you and I've heard from about ScienceLogic is you guys have this kind of moniker, seek, contextualize, and act. And by the way, I love the word contextualize. People around me know that I use that word all the time because everything is only important in the context of how it's being used.
Right.
So talking about seek, contextualize, and act, tell me, let's start talking about, the SL1 platform and what you guys are doing. So go into that a little bit more and help everybody understand what you guys mean by seek, contextualize, and act.
Okay, sure, Sean. So, fundamentally, when you think about C, it is about having visibility into all the infrastructure that is supporting, and not just infrastructure, but the applications that are supporting the services that your IT department is providing to your business as well as to your end customers. So C is about being able to automatically discover and monitor, collect data on all the infrastructure and applications that support those services. That involves not just collecting events, it's not just collecting metrics, but it's also being able to bring in things like configuration information or log information, user response times. It's about the ability to collect a large variety or a wide variety of different data types from a wide variety of data sources. And to us, that's what C is all about. We have this platform that allows you to automatically discover and collect information and fuse that data together into a single data lake. As part of that process, so go ahead, sir.
Sorry to cut you off. So when you say collecting information, because I think this is key, right? Is like you said before, collecting data, cleaning up the data, right? So you have to connect to the sources. So talk to me about how you guys do like discovery of something. So let's use two examples. You've got some type of business application that is kicking off, say, standard log entries, and then you have maybe a CMDB like ServiceNow. So how does your platform discover both of those and make that connection and map the data fields and things like that?
So we use a variety of techniques for collecting the data, both agentless and agent-based, and that ranges from bringing in events to API collection, doing some type of forensic analysis on through the OS. We do streaming, polling, et cetera. We also have a variety of patented techniques for doing the discovery before we begin the collection. So we have an approach that we refer to as power packs, which allow you to develop technology-focused approaches that can take any of these techniques and apply them to a VMware environment, to a Cisco UCS environment, to a NetApp environment. So depending on the technology that we need to discover and the type of information that we want to collect, we can apply any combination of those methods or techniques to bring in the data. And so we have over 400 out-of-the-box power packs for monitoring various technologies, and we provide an SDK for customers to build their own power packs themselves with low-code development, not requiring you to be a programmer in order to build integrations with new technologies. And we found that, with the 400 we have out of the box, we're able to bring in the majority of data that is running in most enterprise organizations today, both legacy and, modern technologies. But there's always, a few one-offs, unique requirements, that people need to support, whether it's, NASA with special, equipment, satellite equipment that they need to monitor, or it's somebody who's doing some kind of, IoT-based monitoring of refrigerator systems. We can we can develop a power pack that brings in the data that is available. We can discover those items, those resources, whatever kind of device it is, and then start collecting the data using those different approaches. So hopefully that
So
provides...
So are the power packs, are they, so you guys offer, I think you said 400 out of the box, and an SDK. can I, as a customer, write a Power Pack and post it up into like the ScienceLogic community and have somebody else download it?
Yes.
So
yes.
is there an exchange of information? Okay.
Yes,
That's
there's an ability
cool.
to exchange that. Yes.
And are the Power Packs bidirectional? So I mean, I know obviously you can pull data in. So if you're basically trying to monitor optical equipment or something like that, and using, say, a TL1 protocol, you could build a Power Pack to that TL1 and bring it in. But is a Power Pack the same mechanism by which I might write data out into a CMDB or another data source?
It is. We have three different, what we call flavors of Power Packs. We have monitoring, which is a one-way ingestion. And then we have automation Power Packs, which push data out. And then we have synchronization Power Packs, which allow you to exchange information in multi-directions. So depending on the nature of the Power Pack, it supports bidirectional or single directional communications.
So a synchronization Power Pack would a use case might be a CMDB where you guys are doing your discovery. They've got their CMDB, and you're able to update the CMDB with some information you may be finding through your discovery. But at the same time, if somebody puts in something into the CMDB through some type of other change process, that could be reflected into your platform.
That's correct. And we do both directions with the CMDB. Yes.
Cool. Okay. So we've got the C part.
Right.
Now let's tell me more about the contextualize part. My favorite part.
Sure. So the contextualize really has two aspects. The first is around the relationship, which is really, I think what you're referring to is the context, understanding, how all of this stuff works together. We've got, network routers and switches and servers and cloud services and all these different piece parts that if you are looking at them as individual assets or devices, they're not very useful. But if you understand the relationships between them, the connections, how they communicate with one another in order to support the service or the application, that is context, right? Understanding the context of how that, disk is, supporting the server that is supporting this, service that is being delivered to the end customer. That is really where you have context to start to begin to apply analytics. One of the things which is the second piece, because one of the things that we've seen organizations struggle with in the past is they try to apply analytics on everything. And what that can often end up producing is, something like a ping pong effect, where you're applying analytics on one thing, but you don't understand how that is affected by something else, and so then it affects that other thing, and that other thing does something, and it comes back, and you start having this back and forth interaction. And so we're using the topology, the relational topology between the infrastructure components. So you could look at network topology, you could look at, the server communications, but you also want to understand how the network and the server and the applications that are running on that server and how they're communicating with the storage array and the database that's running out somewhere, or they're talking to some SaaS application in order to process credit card, payments. All of those intercommunications are crucial to understand whether something is important, and then you want to be able to look at and apply the analytics on the service. How is the service performing over time? What are the service components that are made up of these lower level devices? How are those varying or deviating from what is normal behavior from the service perspective? Because if you think about, especially in cloud and virtual environments, devices, they come and go. And it doesn't really make sense to apply machine learning on a container that only exists for a minute to perform a specific function. So by putting those containers or putting VMs or putting these virtual components in the context of a service and what the service might be. I mean, it could be an authentication service. It could be a credit card payment service. It could be a login service. And those little services then comprise the overall application that is being delivered to an end, employee or an end client or customer. Then we can start to detect when something is not normal, something's weird, it's outside the range of expected behavior, and start to understand or drill in further to understand what's going on in the environment. So context is all about understanding the relationships and then also applying analytics onto those relationships in order to learn patterns and behaviors and detect abnormal patterns or behaviors off that data.
And I would assume that your discovery and topology is absolutely key in that context, right? Of being able to understand connectivity and things like that. Great. Yes. So let's move on to ACT, and an area near and dear to my heart, having started a company and sold it to BMC. That's a little bit of our almost overlap. I sold it to BMC, and I was there for a year, and then I left, and then I think you showed up like 6 months after I left. So, we were all about automation and runbook automation, and really the precursor to a lot of stuff that you guys are talking about now. So talk a little bit about what you guys are doing in the automation space, because I think this is really, really key to the whole value proposition of AIOps.
Yes, and it's really, where we see is a key differentiator for us is that we're not only, collecting, discovering, collecting the data and adding the context to it, but now you have that ability to start to automate. And because all the data is in our data lake, and within the contextualization of the services and, with all the analytics applied to it, now we can drive automation. This is where we do a lot of automation as it relates to, service management. As I mentioned before, ticketing, updating your CMDB, keeping that, aligned. We also can ingest information from your CMDB, whether that be change information, actual asset information. We can determine that perhaps somebody wanted a particular device configured a certain way, and we can detect that what is actually in production is not aligned with what is in the CMDB, and we can either alert you of that discrepancy, or we can update the CMDB to reflect what actually exists in the environment. So we can work both ways. You can choose your source of truth being the CMDB or it being ScienceLogic, which a lot of our customers appreciate having that flexibility. We also have automations that we're actually in the process of rolling out a whole new set around integrations with things like your notification tools, things like Teams and Slack and PagerDuty and XMatters or Ops Genie. We have a series of workflows that are coming out, integrations with your DevOps tools or your orchestration tools and your security ops tools, BI and analytics tools. So you start thinking about things like Jenkins and Chef and Puppet and the BI tools like a Splunk. We have got integrations with Splunk and ServiceNow from the ITSM perspective. So there are many opportunities for automating the processes or the workflows that are part of your day-to-day operational duties that don't require a person or human to go log into another system in order to enter in information. We're actually feeding the data from ScienceLogic into those tools and automating those manual processes that would normally be performed by people so that you can start to do things faster, whether that's respond to change, whether it's fix problems, create the tickets, whether it's, feed data in for better decision making from a financial perspective. We've got some customers who are integrating with their financial management tools so that they can get a better sense of their costs, the costs that they may incur from moving to the cloud, for example, or the cost of, making decisions about maintenance. If you're doing asset management, you want accurate data about the assets that are being used, which ones are not being used, and being able to make determinations on where you should renew maintenance or, end of life certain technologies, or maybe you need to do a whole refresh of different technologies. And so having that information, that data fed into those other systems is allowing organizations to make better and more informed decisions as well.
So that's all really good stuff, and I think you pointed at a very broad swath of what you guys can do. Is there one integration that kind of sticks out in your mind as something that's pretty cool that that you could give us a little bit deeper dive in and kind of talk about? Because I think a lot of our audience is like, okay, well, give me a really good example of something that is what you perceive as pretty cool stuff.
Okay. So one area that we've recently introduced is being able to integrate with your network configuration and backup management tools. So being able to feed data in. So for example, we work with a company called RestorePoint. We have the ability, again, where we discover devices out there, we can actually inform RestorePoint what network devices exist so that it then can go out and start to look at the configuration of those network devices, and it can start to manage backups and security and configuration around those network devices. So one use case is actually populating RestorePoint, rather than them having to go out and do discovery or having someone manually determine. The second piece of it is when something goes wrong. They're monitoring the network. They're monitoring the configurations. They can feed events into ScienceLogic. We can then take those events and treat them as part of our correlation and service impact analysis and figure out that there is a problem, and maybe that network router or switch or firewall is the cause. At that point, we can launch back into RestorePoint to that specific device and be able to diagnose the problem, because we can actually enrich the ticket with the last backup or the last detailed configuration information, so that we're able to leverage that information for actually going out then later and fixing the problem. So I don't know if that's giving you the kind of detail that you're asking for, but that would be an example of multiple direction integration to specifically diagnose network configuration issues or network backup issues that may be impacting your service at any point.
I think that's a good example. So jumping off of that, just as an example, I would think would be kind of cool, especially in this world of heightened security, as it should be, the ability to say, let's say you have a router that has a standard configuration on it, and somebody went in and did a change and maybe activated some type of service on there that shouldn't have been activated, or it could be a server too. But let's say a router, and you had some type of scanning tool that was scanning that device and saying, oh, this is this service has been activated on this router, possibly a violation of some kind of policy. That generates an event into you guys. You guys can correlate it, bounce it across other different things, and eventually come to conclusions like, hey, this thing shouldn't be on.
Right.
And then go back to RestorePoint, and RestorePoint say, reconfigure this router based on the known backup that was, say, 24 hours ago.
Yes.
And bring that thing back into compliance.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. And so if you have the scanning tool would have to have identified that there was some security, potential security issue. That would be one feed into ScienceLogic. The RestorePoint could be identifying, an event that has happened, right? That there's some kind of performance event. We could correlate those two things together along with other events that are happening in the environment, and be able to then diagnose that diagnose that problem and go back into RestorePoint to restore the backup. Yes.
Yeah, it gets even more interesting, right? Because you could then, you guys could query the router and see when that last configuration was made, And then you can look at the performance statistics of that router and see if there was maybe an increase in traffic coming off of that router. And then that may actually be an indication that somebody went in, made the change, opened it up, and then allowed someone to come in and start doing something that they shouldn't have been doing. So and then kind of start looking at downstream connected devices to see how they're performing. So cool stuff. I think, I'm always good on, I always like hearing tangible examples, right? And really kind of digging into something of like kind of the art of the possible. So, so anything else? I mean, we're kind of coming up on our time. Anything else you wanted to bring up around ScienceLogic, your SL1 platform, or any kind of innovative things you guys got coming down the pike that you can actually talk about and not under safe harbor or something?
I think I guess the closing point that I would like to share is that organizations are often intimidated when they hear something as a journey, right? And you and I have both used that term, and I think that what we've seen is that with our customers is that it's good to start. We small and not try to bite off too much all at once. We've seen people progress, see contextualize ACT at different rates within each of those areas. We've put together a maturity model that is broken out by the see contextualize ACT and over 5 levels, and you can move at different rates. You can focus a lot on the getting all the data together. You could spend the majority of your time doing that, then later add in context, or you may do a little bit of data and then add a little context and go back and add a little data, a little more context, and then, start to add in automation as you go. So, I just would emphasize the fact that having a flexible mindset in terms of, you're not going to do AIOps in a night or in a day, in a week. It's going to take time, and you can make some significant progress in 3 to 4 months, and then continue to build on that as you move forward. And that, I think, would be a key point that I'd like to have people think about, that you don't have to jump in, both feet all at once and try to do it all, but you can actually make progress and see tangible results, measurable outcomes without having to implement tons of analytics and tons of automation day one.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Anybody who's been listening to this broadcast and these our weekly, we do an AIOps Evolution weekly broadcast. Comes out every Friday. We broadcast that every Friday at 4:00. We talk about that a lot. It's AIOps is a strategy. It's not a platform.
Right.
You need to look at it and have a long-term vision for it, and figure out how to, like you said, start small and build upon it. So, well, Leslie, it's been a pleasure. It was really nice meeting you finally after all these years of running in like kind of a parallel orbit. And I wish you guys the best of luck over at ScienceLogic, and hopefully we'll have you guys back on in the future.
All right.
So I just, again, I want to thank everybody for this broadcast. Tune in for more episodes of the AIOps Evolution Season 2. I'm your host, Sean McDermott. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation about AIOps and the future of IT operations. Interested in a deeper dive on these topics? Check out our resources available at AIOpsevolution.com. And remember to subscribe to get the latest episode.